different taste, maybe better, maybe your sushi. Uh, but how do you feel driving by your favorite place? It's the same exact feeling when you enter your home at some point and you have that smell of mom's ul'as or mulukhiyya, and you have that happy feelings in your mind. You know, like we have some traditional, the scent is really amazing and strong. It brings all the happy memories. You're invited to someone and you smell that, it hits. And that just food. The amount of release of serotonin in the brain, or some of those, satisfying chemicals, high making chemicals, just very little. Multiplied by thousands and hundreds of thousands when you're engaged in gambling, pornography, substance abuse. That little urge that even though you're not that hungry, but it's my favorite place, it's right across, I have 5 minutes, maybe I can get an extra bite to eat. You see how that urge to stop at, Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, even though you had your coffee, but it's just that little extra one. I can smell the coffee driving by. Imagine what with a substance abuse to something like heroin or meth, or any kind of anti-anxiety medication like some Xanax, or you hear different names. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of those. But how, if it's not working, you can use my phone. It is? Okay. So imagine how difficult that would be. And sometimes not feeling that struggle that the other person is having, it's so easy to say, why don't you just stop? Don't you know it's harmful? Right? That simple kind of magic bullet solution. Just stop. Decide and you will be able to stop. It's not that easy. And that brings me to a question. Is addiction a sin or a disease? And I want to hear your opinion. Is it a sin or disease? Disease? Both? How?
The definition of a sin. The definition of a sin is something that separates you from God. Anything that separates you from God is a sin, regardless of what it is.
I agree 100%.
So it's both.
So if you're addicted to going to church, that's a sin.
It doesn't separate you from God.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely it would.
Absolutely.
If you're letting go of your family that the church gave you through marriage, and you're blowing them off to come to church, and I think it absolutely is.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's the same argument. Usually, we have the example, but it's like that person who tend to exercise. The likelihood of that person not making it with the family or not taking care of his family, very, very low, similar. If you truly, truly know what is God's purpose in your life and what are your duties in terms of a priority list, I don't think it can happen. But how about pornography? A start of experimentation with pornography, watching something online. How would you say that this person is addicted the minute he or she start watching, or that person fell into sin and start repeating the sin, and now he's addicted to that sin? And once that person is addicted to the sin, it becomes a disease. And then you cannot separate the two after that. That person may have the desire to repent wanted to repent, attempted, but then does what? Stumbles. Non-stop. And the disease becomes higher. So it started with the sin, and then the addiction followed, and then later on it became the disease, and it's a sin kind of underneath. Anyone kind of have any thoughts about that? Yes, Yarosh. Is what? Doesn't know it's a sin?
Doesn't know it's like it's gonna drag him down. Some people they doesn't know. They don't know.
For things that are not like that are not bad. Like,
So, for example, like being on Facebook all the time becomes, at some point, it can become a disease. It can become an addiction. My brain is still also working. Every time I share, I'm waiting to hear feedback about my posts. I'm waiting to see what other people say about my post. That becomes kind of a random reward. It makes me anxious. It makes me want to share more. It makes me want to read more. And I become what? My brain got hooked on it. So it becomes a disease. But you didn't know that can become a disease. That being on Facebook or being on social media can become a disease. Well, the minute you realize you remember the definition? It's harmful. The minute you realize it's harmful, you know it's a sin. You know it's gonna, God bless you. You know it's gonna start affecting you and affecting your family. You got hooked. I'll give you some example just about behavioral, easygoing stuff, like the one Russia is talking about. Social media addiction. The compulsively checking social media every spare moment. I want you to do a self-assessment without raising your hand or showing me any facial expression, to keep it anonymous, okay? Prioritizing Facebook over actual time spent with family and friends. I'm just using Facebook, but I have nothing against it. Consumed with what other people are doing. Check up on them for hours on end. Feeling a jealousy or an anxiety over a lack of likes. How come nobody is liking what I thought what I shared was extremely interesting and amazing, and people should read that and comment. Nobody is. I'm being driven crazy here. Media becomes your source of feeling validation and boosting your high self-esteem. It's like, wow, do you know how many followers I have? Like Trump when he says I have 40 million followers sometimes. It's a great feeling, huh? I have nothing against him either. I don't want to get into troubles. No, just... Media becomes, I really want to put 100 lines next to validation and self-esteem. Hundreds of lines put under those two. Because sometimes we end up living on social media in a virtual world where we connect with people, where we get gratified by connecting with people, and it's all digitally, all virtually. Brain releases a burst of dopamine. You get hooked on this stimulus over time and you want more. You just want more and more and more. Compulsions leads to checking of mobile devices even when it is not safe or appropriate. Can anyone give me examples? Huh? When driving, in the movies, having a quiet dinner. While you're doing this lecture. Is what? To the bathroom, to the bedroom. Actually, it's not what? ممكن يقع. It can fill in the in the toilet, and then you pay money. It's out of your pocket, your family's pocket. I have insurance. Don't worry about me. When we pray, when we're reading a book for our kids, do you think that would affect them? Sometimes actually when we're having an intimate moment with our husbands and wives, it's right next to me. I gotta look. What this buzz has to, like, who is texting me? I need to know. I need to respond. The threshold of not tolerating who is there it becomes يعني خلاص, we cannot take it. It does affect us on the long run. And maybe because it's acceptable, like Rasha said, it's like, what's the big deal? It's just someone takes, what's the big deal? And we make the other person feel like they have two heads. Like, am I complaining about something valid or something reasonable? It's like, I'm just checking the phone. What else? Net compulsions. Obsessive online gambling, gaming, shopping, auctions, stock trading. There is brain work that happens behind all of these. Have you seen anyone trade for a living? About how many screens? And sometimes they wear diapers so they cannot miss a moment. Like, I'm not, like, it's extreme ends. Like, I cannot miss what happens in the market. Your father is dying, okay, resuscitate him and I'll come. After the stock closes, the stock market closes. Compulsions, I can't. I love him, I want to take care of him, but I can't. Compulsions. Active day or night without the limitation experienced in real life and the risk of being caught. Sometimes even it passes by the normal social behavior. Like, I got caught watching pornography by my daughter. And trust me, we have examples. We live these examples. She knew. She saw. I promised her, I'm not going to do this again. She comes again and she catches me. Now she's really alert and she wants to know what's going on. I got caught again. It's going to hurt her. I cannot stop. It's going to harm her, the whole father-daughter image. I cannot stop. That's what I mean by even taking risks. Yes, Joe.
So addictions are negative. It's a disease.
Yes.
Not certain that we're all saying that a lot of these things aren't necessarily bad until they become.
I want you to go back to the definition and just reach the two words when it says it's starting to harm. But trading for a living, and I can manage, and I can turn it off, and I cannot take care of my family, there's nothing wrong with that. Connecting with my relatives and my friends and having a group, a Bible study group online, and I know when to turn it off, it's not a problem. But it becoming to be harmful, I know now there is a realization that it's becoming harmful. Now that goes into the addiction. Before that, it's not an addiction. It's not a disease, it's not a sin. If it's, again, it doesn't harm me, and it's in the open, I don't have to hide. Would you agree that this is okay? A boy spent 80 hours, this is just an example, a week, and 10 to 14 hours a day playing Warcraft. His entire social existence online while his actual relationship suffered. By the way, these numbers are becoming more norm now. Watch. And the reason I'm saying all of this, and the reason we're talking about addiction, this is not just for couples, this is for our whole entire family system. I need to watch how much time my kids are spending playing games. because it might be a silly game that I see. There is no harm, there is no violence, there is nothing wrong. Why not? ولا بيأذي ولا he's not harassing his younger sister, ولا he's not bothering me and he's not asking me for anything. He's just saying by himself, peaceful. What's the harm in that? What's the harm in that? Have that kid at age 22 and interview him for a job. And get a word out of him. Get an eye contact out of him. See his nonverbal communication. Put him in a situation where there is like tension. It's like a newborn. Didn't develop anything. All the skills that we develop, even adults, by the way, adults that go into that phase and they become very closed on themselves for years, they come out. I worked with a doctor who became very enclosed on himself, dove into reading, just kind of not doing much. Became very socially awkward after 5 to 10 years. Extremely socially awkward. Certain words that he would say, sometimes not even use words that others may not get. Really awkward. What happened to him? He's just isolated. His family, his kids, his colleagues, and became just a robot. Reading 10, 12 hours a day, working the rest, sleeping a few hours, and just khalas. Immediate gratification is a driver for this, but results in negative consequences instead like mixed out credit cards, the failed relationship, job-related struggles, and so on. Information overload. Sometimes we take a lot of, again, I want you to go to the extreme end because we're assuming it became a problem. So someone self-educated, reading, it's not a problem. But someone who dive into research. I have someone that raising kids and most recent books about raising kids and reading every book, and almost every book disagrees with the other book, and trying to make sense of all the books, and it's non-stop, and every blog and every opinion and every group, and that's the obsession. And the time spent with the kids decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. She thinks that she is helping her kids. She became addicted. So now the goal of knowing to raise my kids pushed aside, and now the addiction to knowing more about the topic became the disease. You see how slowly things can change on you without realizing? They creep on you. Again, smartphones, internet, high speed, unlimited data made it very easy for all of us to keep going. All the information at our fingertips. And again, you see the different example. Celebrity gossip, the politics in our country, Trumbo madness. It sucks you in. And I promise you, if you go disappear for a month or two and come back to the news, you're going to find yourself not missing much. صدقني. I love the news. I went to the monastery for 40 days and I came and I thought the world changed. And it's like I watched it yesterday. There was nothing. Not much. Really not much. And I used to be disciplined that I need to watch the news. I developed that need. I made it my need. I made it my addiction. But imagine you do that with other extreme examples. We'll go to the next one. Help. So, realistic examples of how can we break that chains of addiction when it comes to social media and behavioral over the digital age. Well, they say that 50% of the solution when it comes to addiction and substance abuse is the realization. That's why the 12 steps starts by what? I'm an addict. I have to realize that. Because there is a stage before that, they call it the pre-contemplative stage, that why everyone thinks it's a problem? I'm not seeing a problem. Everybody does it. It's okay. But I have to realize it's negatively affecting me. It's harming me. It's harming my family. So accept responsibility and learn how to change your behavior without blaming the internet for your addiction. It's there. What can I do? I go to work and everybody does it. I go home and I have the time. And we start like putting the excuses. Monitor yourself. How much time do you spend? For those on social media and keeping up with everyone, how many times do I check? You say average now, and now it's on the low end command. It's the new, there's no research. We check our phones on average 150 to 200 times a day. If you give it a minute or two, guess what? That's a lot of time. But I don't care about that time. You know what I care about? Those the social interactions that I was involved in when I checked that phone, when I looked at that, and I kind of zoned for a few seconds. And there was a conversation happening in the background with someone that's dear to me or important. Whether it's at work or at home, or your son is telling you something exciting about school, or something that very important that you have to address. It's like, and you didn't hear a thing. And then 2 months later, you get a call from school, and it's like, we requested your attendance to this meeting, and you go ask your son or daughter, and it's like, I told you. And you said, okay, it's okay, don't worry about it. I said that? Like, yes, you did. So that happens. By the way, we do it all the time because we're distracted. The multitasking, by the way, it's a myth. It's a myth. I think it's our worst enemy. We run after mirage, like واحد كده after it does not work. God gave us one brain, one operation, finish, cross, and go. Even on your simplest thing of priority list, there is nothing better than crossing that one so I can see it's crossed so I can go to the next one. Finish your task and not cross anything. You're going to keep looking at that paper over and over and over and over. You may have to read every time and think about every task, and it's like, okay, I'm done with that. It's a myth. But imagine now you're not just looking at a sentence. You're actually in a world. You're diving into a 50 million feet pool of people. Diving. وبتسرح بقى. You go from Federico's story, and Federico's friend had a picture, so I go to her picture and she's going to take me to that story, and I keep swimming around. We do that unintentionally, but we end up doing it, and we end up getting gratification out of it, that immediate gratification. Limit your time online. Say, I'm gonna turn all the push notification when I go home, because during dinner and the 2 hours I'm gonna spend with my kids, I'm gonna have 100% of my attention to my wife and kids, or my husband and my kids, or my task that I'm gonna be working on. But imagine the amount of distraction and fragmentation. I'm gonna show you a quick video. distraction and fragmentation that you go through. It's a 3-minute video.
Reading an article online when you get an instant message with a link to a funny photo, which of course you have to share. And now you're reading your Facebook news wall, which sends you to a video of a panda bear attacking a kid, and now you're reading Wikipedia to learn everything you can about the violent behavior of panda bears. And this is what 3 minutes on the internet can be like. We live like this all the time, and it has to have some kind of effect on us.
The net is making us more superficial as thinkers.
That is Nicholas Carr. He is the author of The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. To understand this whole thing better, we need to go way back in time, to say, like, the prehistoric age.
You wanted to know everything going on around you, because the more you knew about your surroundings, the less likely you were to get attacked by a predator. And there's even evidence that our brains release some dopamine, pleasure-producing neurotransmitter chemical, to reward us for seeking out and finding new information.
So getting distracted felt good and helped us stay alive. But the problem is that nowadays, predators aren't much of an issue, but we still have the same brains. And also, there's the internet, which is...
It's an incredibly information-rich environment that the net creates for us, and that's why we use it so much. I mean, sounds, pictures, words, text. And what this tends to do is promote a sort of compulsive behavior in which we're constantly checking our smartphone, constantly glancing at our email inbox. We're kind of living in this perpetual state of distraction and interruption.
Which is dangerous because...
that mode of thinking crowds out the more contemplative, calmer modes of thinking.
And that focused, calm thinking is actually how we learn. It's a process called memory consolidation.
And that means the transfer of information from our short-term working memory to our long-term memory. And it's through moving information from your working memory to your long-term memory that you create connections between that information and everything else you know.
So you've got this awesome life-changing piece of information in your short-term memory, but then you hear that email ding and poof, there it goes. That email takes its place and you never get a chance to learn anything, all because of one distraction.
So attention is the key, and if we lose control of our attention or are constantly dividing our attention, then we don't really enjoy that consolidation process.
But I can hear it now. Someone out there is saying, what does learning matter if all the information in the world is just a Google search away? Well...
that is kind of shortchanging our intellects. If that's the way you're using your mind, just kind of searching very quickly and finding information and then forgetting it very quickly, you're never building knowledge. You're kind of thinking like a computer.
Which means that our very humanity is at stake. And it would be a shame if we all got assimilated because, well, humanity is pretty neat.
I really believe that if you look at the great monuments of culture, they come from people who are able to pay attention and control their mind. Thinking some very creative ways.
And it's this kind of thinking that's at risk, being eroded one cute cat video at a time. Don't get us wrong, the internet is good for lots of things, and it should be celebrated. But the best thing we can do for our minds is to find some time every day to unplug, calm down, and focus on one thing. Your email and those cats isn't holding you down.
Get the point? Did it make sense? And I don't want to make this about our kids, but actually, because it's a meeting for couples and people who are married, imagine how much of our needs get pushed aside when we're so distracted. We're not paying attention. Imagine that. I mean, you don't have to have kids to pay attention to these things. How about your spouse? How about your husband or wife? an exercise for the group and try to see if you can make it. Put all your gadgets away from the bedroom. I see a lot of people already start cringing. Have a charging station away from the bedroom. No phones in your kids' room. No TV in the kids' room. Push notification stops, and not on every app you have. Maybe on the most important thing. You're on call, or you have certain emails that you're waiting for. Just turn it on for that one particular thing. Not everything on your phone. Sometimes we use a tracking device for our own device. Sometimes we use with a device looking for our device at home. That's how we came. I mean, I want you to imagine that. I did it the other day, using my iPad to look for my phone, or my phone to look for my iPad. Where is it? Lose it for a little bit. Lose it for the quality time that you're going to spend during dinner. No TV, no phones, no texting. Maybe every once in a while, if your kids are older, maybe high school or something, okay, tell me what's going on with your friends, what your, okay, it's a text on day. Show me, tell me. We can. I'm not trying to demonize technology and media. It serves us in a great deal, in great ways. Everything is accessible. It makes life much easier. Sometimes you actually can connect with your college son or daughter much better via text, or your high schoolers via text, or send a small verse via text. It can help. But if everyone's sitting, looking at their phone, I mean, go to, anyone here flies frequently? Like goes to away? Go to a terminal and just take a look and just count the amount of heads that are up. Like I had to travel recently, you go to the terminal and everybody's doing this. If something weird happens, don't run or do something. Nobody would get it. Everybody's looking at their phone. Don't do that at home. If you're going to do it at work, or you need to do it for work, or you need to be on all the time, take a break at home. Okay. So that's the social media. Whether it's your Snapchat, Instagram, MySpace, Facebook. I know MySpace is gone. It was very old. Even my parents now. By the way, it's hitting everyone. Grandparents are more on social media now than the parents and the kids. They're FaceTiming nonstop. They learn. It's so easy. Life made it easy for them to connect. But we need to give it a break. Yani Tita doesn't have to be watching every single action in Egypt about her 400 friends. We're not going to be able to tell her, stop. But can you imagine the wide range? A few years back, we used to think it's only for us who know. The kids are so distant from it, and parents are so distant from it. Right now, the whole entire line, in order, are hooked on. What life is going to feel or taste like after a while? Okay. So that's the first one. So I wanted to focus on two things. The social media, digital addiction, and the sex addiction. And sex addiction, I think we can put it a few just under the umbrella of, this is not all internet-based, but let's at least talk on the ones that's internet-based. Pornography, chatting, sex online, images, surfing, those websites. reading sometimes actually can be under that. It's how explicit, how things can go deep in that category. And again, think of the harm, think of the crossing the line. It became the #1 public health crisis in America right now, for all, young and old, young and old. You hear about all the sexual aggression that happens in our schools. Every other day you hear about an incident. And you always like wonder, how can a 11-year-old, a 12-year-old do this? Well, do you realize what they're watching? Do you realize the amount of junk being pushed on them? It's one of the most lucrative industry in the country right now, pornography. Money. It increases the sexual aggression, even in your relationship. If you end up watching too much, it increases that sexual aggression in the relationship. You wanted different things. Sometimes things that your spouse, your wife or husband, and by the way, I don't want to discriminate, but it's a mainly guys addiction, but we have some females that struggle with that. The percentage varies, but it's primarily for men. It increases that sexual aggression. Become very hypersexual, whether it's time or not time, whether my spouse is ready or not ready. For a husband, you know, the wife needs to be not just emotionally ready, hormonally ready, body physically ready. And if you're hypersexual, or you're watching things all the time, you have no tolerance to, you know, I can't, or I'm not ready, or no, it becomes a fight. It becomes a source of stress. And it destroys, it's actually an article I read, it becoming, sexual addiction becoming the #1 reason for divorce. #1 reason for divorce in America. Sometimes we justify and we say, it's victimless. I'm not harming anyone. How come I cannot enjoy myself? Why? I'm not engaging in anything with someone, it's just all online, or all virtual. If I enjoy, why wouldn't anyone care? Why would anyone care? And I think we interfere with one of the most delicate, sensitive areas of our being as humans. Most sacred. It's the part that physically makes the two one, makes the husband and wife one. Yes, we have the spiritual connection, the oneness, but it's right after that. It's right after that. And we mess with the nature. We mess with the way God created. We're exposed to a lot of junk. Models with directors and producers and actors and cut. And sometimes we fantasize and think that this is reality. And the standards in our mind become so upside down. I was listening to a porn star, an ex-porn star today. She was giving a lecture to high school, in a Christian school, about the act of, it's an industry, with every word that industry indicates. And she was breaking down that it's just nothing. And she started talking about a study about porn star and their death. And over from the 88 or something, I don't know how many porn stars. Their average age was 37.5. Half of them died by suicide. If someone who's looks so good on screen, selling me something that is so good, why wouldn't they survive that? especially they make tons of money. What's missing? What's missing? So we interfere with the most delicate, sensitive aspect of our being and marriage. We develop wrong expectation. The expectation becomes low, kind of all the standards and boundaries starts to shift. Now we're exposed to something different. And one engaged in that and the other one is left behind, is like, doesn't understand why there's such a request and weird requests and different uses of the body. And it's like, what's happening here? And it becomes so confusing, and it starts to build resentment. Because one thinking that it's not satisfied and the other one can never satisfy it because they cannot live up to the image that's being acted. And if they agree with no respect to their emotional and physical well-being, then one always loses. By the way, the two are losing. But just visibly, one is always losing. The Playboy creator, Hefner, he claims that he was the missionary who just liberated people sexuality. He just came and he did the things that nobody ever done before. And these are the words that quotes from someone who became sexually addicted and was treated. And he said, a missionary from hell. He was talking about him. He said this guy was a missionary from hell. He said, you cannot get a satisfaction. It's a bottomless well. There's no satisfaction whatsoever. They're victims of deceit. Promotes promiscuity. Yes, promiscuity. Shortens foreplay and certain behavior that a husband and wife should engage in. Because one is very hypersexual and the other one is just contributes to premature ejaculation. So one is done and the other person is like in the dark, on the dust. I know I'm talking about like things that we never talk about in the church, but it's important. It's really important for us to know. These things are real. Destroys the dignity of partners in the marriage. Just to this particular addiction, and if it reached that level of addiction, seek professional help right away. There are 12 steps. There's counseling for that particular addiction. Blaming and shaming is not the best way to deal with that, or with any kind. Support, if there's a realization, if there's an admission of guilt, an admission of fault doing, I think it's being in a supportive relationship. And there's a lot of materials on recovering from sexual addiction. And maybe we can talk, I'm sorry. And there's a lot of materials about talking about recovering from sexual addiction. Yes, Nancy.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something really quickly. Is this online? The church, just hit,
Mixed.
So, my nephew, he's in 8th grade, and he has a good relationship with his parents, but he's told his parents that his friends think it's really weird that he won't watch pornography with them. So I just want to make sure.
He was in what?
His friends think it's really weird that he won't watch pornography.
With them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not with the parents, with the friends.
Well, that's what I meant.
Just so we're clear, it's online.
He does watch with his parents, just not with his friends.
So my point in bringing that up is just that, that in today's day and age, this is starting so, I think if we're hearing about it in the 8th grade, it must have started in 6th grade. If he's actually saying it to his parents now, like it's such a normalized behavior. So I'm just saying that it's starting, for your own children, it's starting very, very young, and like, especially with all the access to internet and private spaces. So even on school trips, when they go on trips. I mean, anyone brings a
What,
phone.
what 8 years old?
No, he's in
Squ-
80 right
But
now.
what 8 years old? It's a second grade, first, second grade? Okay, so we have example of first and second graders who watch pornography. Again, I'm not trying to scare you. We have a lot of examples of either parents' ignorance or parents' absence. Because you can have a highly educated, sophisticated parents that know exactly what to do, but they're absent. And we have parents who just came from Egypt, they don't know much about technology. And they're absent. But we have some who came and they have such a control. Maybe not know more about any other person about technology, but they know enough to be with their kids all the time, to know when to give a gadget, to know how to go to your bedroom, whether you don't take any gadgets in your bedroom, if you see anything, what to do. I mean, we're getting into the kids, but it's hitting. It was when I started reading recently. I mean, I left a couple of years ago. The numbers, I was shocked. I mean, we're talking about 90% of boys by age 24 have watched everything. Everything. That means 10 out of 100 mature kids, only 10 out of 100. Their innocence and their brains still intact. It's scary. 60% among girls. And you read these statistics and just scary. Yes, Mary.
I just think it's important for us to know that these things happen within our church too. It's not that, they're learning them from kids at school or whatever. Now, the church can learn these things together too.
Not necessarily. These are not there are some kids that just end up typing the wrong thing and one led to the other. There are some kids that just a little curious. Some kids that they hear from their school and they go try at home.
I think Barry's point is we're not special. It's everywhere.
That they'll learn it
Oh,
from
it's
friends, they'll learn
absolutely,
it
yes.
from a friend from church,
Well,
not
yes.
just a friend from school.
No, everywhere.
How we control those, how we control the kids. If they go outside in the school, they have to be in an environment with friends, and they have to.
احنا نسيب المارriage ونتكلم في الكيدز if that's what you want. I'm fine with that.
I'm sorry, I just brought it up only because I think the addiction starts so young these days.
Yes, which is no. I want the permission if you want to talk about this, but I want to make sure first that we have no question about our relationships, because when we're sound, when we're strong in our relationship, we know the boundaries. We know how much time we're spending on the internet. We know how much time we're paying attention. We're present. I want to be there. There was the fish philosophy. Have anyone heard about the fish philosophy? Came from Seattle. It started in the fish market. And the kind of fishermen are selling the fish. The business was going down. So they start focusing on concepts. The first one was be there with your customer. People just wanted to sell fish. They didn't have the smile. They didn't connect. They didn't talk. And the business was running down. And they just start thinking about, okay, we need help. And that was the first thing. Be there. Can we be there with our kids? Okay, be there. Do we know? I know they're our kids. They're still kids in our eyes. But maybe my son is hitting that stage where I need to start talking. Do you know anything about sex? Do you know what happens? Did anyone talk to you? Let's sit down and ask. Ask me any question you want.
But, I'm a big proponent of this. It needs to start really young. When it's appropriate at age 5, use everything as age appropriate.
Absolutely, yes,
They're 5,
yes.
Use the correct terminology for their private parts. And when they're 8, start to slowly talk about things. So that when they're 13 or 14.
Oh, you're not going to come at 15 and all of a sudden, okay, do you want to hear about sex? I'm like, it's where did you come from? It's are you my father? We never even talked about, rice and beans before. And you want to talk
You're
it's like,
okay, it's time to have the time. Dad, I'm married.
those are your grandchildren.
What guarantees that if you start talking early on, there's no guarantee that it's going to prevent it?
Nobody said there are guarantees, but the likelihood of them being strong, knowledgeable, not taking in, they already have their information. Like I wanted my son to know everything that he was going to learn in health or science class before he even went there, because that is going to spark a whole discussion about more what happened in the science class. Because I'm not having an issue with the materials of the science class. I'm having an issue with what the kids in the science class know about that particular topic. So
That brings another topic. Teachers, we don't know what
their preference, yeah.
they'll make things seem okay when us as some parents are not okay with it.
Like Mary said, are you having a dialogue with them? Are you being there with them throughout? Or are you just appearing during the age where you start, okay, his sound, he start having some hair, okay, I need to worry about this. It's like you're a few years behind. You need to start a little early.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
So, two things about that question. So, dealing with the college kids, there's data that supports what I'm going to say. So, it's not just an opinion. This isn't like, okay, like anecdotally, one kid one time said it. But there's data that supports that the kids are less likely to listen to what you say and more likely to do what you do. So what we're trying to do is not control them. So the word control and the word guarantee are not words that are going to work. And I would refer you back to one of your lecture from last time, that they're going to do whatever they're going to do. You could say anything that you want, and the more that you say you should do this and you should do that, the more they're going to be like, okay. And until you let go of the idea that I'm going to control them or I want to guarantee that they're good, the more they're going to push back. But the thing that we have to rest our hope on is that we're setting a good example. And that's why, not to bring it back to the topic and bring it away from what you guys want to talk about, but I think what Abuna is saying is, if we have a stable foundation, if we have a good marriage, and we're modeling good behavior, we don't have to talk very much. So going back to our own addictions, if they see us, that we're, like we're addicted to coffee, we're addicted to this, we're addicted to that, and we tell them, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. They're like, well, you're addicted and you're always on it and you don't listen to me. And it's like, okay, well, I have nothing to say now.
You remember, just to keep going with that same kind of train of thought, you remember Dr. Samir Ibrahim that came last year? He came from Australia. He gave a lecture and he had the iPad and he was drawing kind of a genogram, a family tree. And he said the most important item in your kids growing up is your relationship with your wife and your relationship with your husband. He made a solid line between the husband and wife, and he said this is the foundation. And if the husband and wife are in harmony, are present, are there, being there, and that's why that's why I talked about the behavior of the social media first to lead to this, because we cannot do this without being distracted. We cannot pay attention to each other if we're all over the place. That video, that attention is the most important thing that your kids need. Till this day, with all the discoveries and all the great things that our kids can have, the most satisfying thing in an adolescent's lifetime is a good relationship with his mom or dad. Rated, and it's not changing. The most gratifying and satisfying thing for an adolescent, a teenager, is the relationship with their parents. If they have that decent relationship, you're good. Even if they get exposed, they'll come back. Even if they fall, like the prodigal son, What brought him back? It was the good memories of his father. It was not that his father was running after him, chasing him and say, come back, I want you to come back. No, he came back to himself, remembered. But if that father can, worse than the pigs, the experience was worse than the one he has with the pigs. Do you think he would ever go back? He would say staying with the pigs is much better. Right? But those good memories of our relationship, supportive, teaching them, talking about, are we talking enough about Christ in the family? Are we behaving like Christ, not talking about Christ? We can talk about Christ. And we can teach them all the good virtues. We're good preachers, right? Parents are very good preachers. But if we're not living the morals and the virtues that we're talking about, Abuna Angelus one time said that, and I never stop using it whenever I'm talking about any parenting. Our kids are the mirrors of us. Look at your son. If there is anything that you don't like in him or her, look deep inside of you and see what's going on. They're mirrors. And there is a saying in Arabic, it says, and I'll translate, أولادنا هيطلعوا زي ما احنا عايشين مش زي ما احنا عايزين. Our kids will grow up to be like we are living, not like we want them to be. Even if they stumble, we all stumbled. هو في حد anyone here خلاص بقى finished all those stages with zero pornography, zero trying anything, zero this, zero that. We had our journey. But I think we're all here because of how our parents took care of us. There is no doubt about that. And by the grace of God, through them. Okay, I مش عايز أطول, بس if anyone has any questions, go ahead. I know it's 9:20, so we started on time, but we finished a little late. Still. But it's Nancy. That's true. And Sheila. She's good at that. Okay, let's pray.
We thank you, our Heavenly Father, for bringing us this evening in peace. We thank you for allowing us to take this chance and to contemplate on the many issues that we have in our lives, in our daily lives. We thank you for allowing us to always come back to you repentant. And we thank you for always opening your arms and taking us in time and time again. We ask, dear Lord, that you allow us to be salt for this earth and light for the world and for our family, so people may see us and our kids may see us and glorify you. Amen.
Through the intercession of St. Mary, St. Mark, hear us, God, when we say thankfully, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. One came late and didn't sign because we have the drawing every time. We have an amazing gift today. So we want everyone.
First one that graduates high school.
Don't mess this up, Nina. Don't mess this up, Nina.
This is good.
That's not right.
Good job, Henry.
Penny in Russia? Penny in Russia? Listen up. It's about climbing. And a massage. Good job. Mommy's proud of you. So we can announce the next meeting within the next week or two, so you guys have a heads up of you want to month. We don't typically do it in sometime Friday every month because it depends on the speakers and what they do. So, very much so we should have it. Another topic next week and next month.
I think it was like 18.
الله يخليك.
ملوخية.
talked to him. He said he's away for the next 2 months and he's booked into the spring. Can I speak French? It's a mutually beneficial relationship. Mutually beneficial relationships are based on trust, but also mutual trust. So I trust, but I'll not focus on mutual trust. So one of the things that the campus conference did was Bishop Sophia met with psychology trust. It's not about people, but it's abstract and those trust and things like that. Human responsibility to something else that is video discussion and switching theories on dating.
Thanks, man. You guys are awesome.
I told him no. I
Facebook